Hi, I'm Jack, the founder of Inflatable kayaking group in Portland, Oregon. I've been curious to compare a number of different inflatable kayaks and other watercraft for a long time, and now we're finally doing it. In this video, I want to compare speed and general observations of all of these vessels. If it's not obvious why I want to compare the speed, I find that speed is really important characteristic of any watercraft. In kayaks, speed is far more important than, say, in cars. If you are driving from New York to LA, Toyota Corolla will get you there in about the same time as a Corvette. However, in kayaks, speed usually means that you can go further in the same amount of time, which is important because realistically, for most outings, your limitation are the time and energy. So the faster kayak will get you more adventuring in the same amount of time and same exertion level. There's also safety in speed. It can get you away from trouble faster. I've been brainstorming how to do this test so that it's scientifically sound, thinking of devices that can pull a kayak with a constant amount of force regardless of its speed. But it turns out to be a little too complicated to make happen. Maybe one day I will do something like that. For today, I'll do it a very unscientific way. I will just paddle each one of these kayaks, trying to exert same amount of energy at a pace that I can sustain for hours. I know, there are potential inconsistencies in this approach and it's not accurate, but I hope it will give us at least a ballpark idea of how fast they are. And I promise to be as objective as I can and paddle as consistently as possible. For this test, I've tried to gather as a various array of watercraft as I could, covering from the cheapest to the fanciest kayak I could get my hands on, and also throwing in some alternatives in the mix, like packraft, folding kayaks, stand-up paddle boards, hard shell kayaks. This time, for double vessels, I will have 2 people in them, since that's pretty important for weight distribution and performance. I will be the only one paddling to keep the consistency. I have no idea what this test will show, and I'm really curious to find out. I wonder how much speed correlates with the price of the boat. Let's jump right in. Intex Challenger K2 might be the introductory kayak to inflatables for so many people. This is an iconic kayak. It used to cost something like $80. Now you might have to pay over $100 for it. Still, it's one of the easiest way to get on the water. Let's see how well it does. I tested it pretty well a couple of years ago. Speed-wise, it seems to do all right. It still is a piece of crap kayak, but as far as the kayak per dollar goes, it's remarkable. As expected, this kayak doesn't track super great, and it's probably not the fastest, but I think it's nostalgic for many people. This is an iconic kayak. Yes, it's a piece of crap. Yes, it's majestic. This kayak, in my previous comparison video, I accidentally labeled K1 as K2. This is an actual K2. They are much rarer than K1s, but let's see how they compare. Theoretically, they should be faster because they're longer, but I really doubt that that will be the case because they're wider. Let's see. It's very comparable in speed to the K1, just a couple of seconds slower, and so I would say almost identical. Another iconic kayak from Intex. You see these all over the place, also cheap. Supposed to be a step above the Challenger ones, but last time I tested it, they turned out to be slower. Let's see how they actually test out this time. Just like I tested a couple of years ago, yes, this one is slower. It's another magnificent piece of crap kayak from Intex. Iconic yellow look you've recognized from lakes all over the place. Intex Excursion Pro, another really popular kayak, became super popular recently. You might have seen my big expose on it. Let's see how fast it is. I predict that it's not super fast, but probably faster than the Explorer and the Challenger. Let's see. Okay, let's go. Alright, turns out the speed of this kayak is identical to the Explorer K2, which is a little surprising for me, but this is with a short skeg. I'm thinking let's test it also with the long skeg. A long skeg gave us 2-second advantage, which is probably within the margin of error, but I want to believe that it gives you a little bit more speed. It certainly feels like it's tracking better. All right, Advanced Elements. These definitely dominate Category 2 kayaks. The guys from Advanced Elements were really unhappy with me that I used this specific kayak. They were saying that it's unrepresentative of their kayaks because it's from something like 17 years ago. From everything I've seen, whenever I take apart their new kayaks, they look pretty identical to me. Okay, this is weird. I really don't want to make it sound like I'm rigging this against Advanced Elements. I expected it to be way faster. It's so far the slowest kayak that I've tested. I suspect that the fact that it's underinflated has to do with it something. I don't have a proper pump today to really inflate it better, but I expected it to be faster. As much as I might not like Advanced Elements, I did think that their kayaks at least are performing better. So I don't know what to say. All right, this is a Aquaglide Columbia. For years, this was my main kayak, and I love it. However, as a Category 2 kayak, it's prone to not drying easily. One issue is I couldn't find the skeg for it, so we're going skegless. Let's see how it tracks and how that will affect the speed. And go. Well, somewhat unexpectedly, this is so far the champion, which is surprising to me. I would say that this kayak generally performs on the same level as Advanced Elements. They have very similar kayaks. I would expect them to do about the same. I will just say that Advanced Elements is underinflated, and that's why it was so much slower. This is Aquaglide Chelan. I love this kayak. This is pretty much Category 3 version of the previous kayak. It's also a little bit higher pressure, so it shouldn't bend as much. And it has a skeg. Although the skeg in this one, it's from a few years ago, and I hope they fixed it by now, is really I expect this one to be kicking butt. Ready and go. It showed an identical time to Columbia, but it certainly feels nice. And it's easy to dry. This is primarily whitewater kayak, and it does best on whitewater. But I see people use them on flat water all the time. Let's see how it does speed-wise. I predict that it actually is okay. But you will end up with a wet butt. And go. Banana Boat is showing very honorable time. It's actually faster than most Category 2 kayaks and just slightly slower than Razorlight.
You get a wet butt.
But you do get a wet butt. This is what I call the tank, Sea Eagle 420X. This is the kayak that has the highest weight capacity of any kayaks that I know of, 855 pounds. I've loaded it up with gear to the brim. It is also not fast. I don't expect it to set any records here. Let's see how it compares though with some cheap one. And go. This kayak is not fast, but actually not as slow as I thought. And it can really handle some whitewater. So if you want to go kayak camping, if you're thinking about hitting some whitewater, this might be a great choice. Here is a really interesting contestant. This is the cheapest pedal kayak that I know of, $855 from the US. However, it's slightly clunkily engineered, and they haven't thought about, you still have to steer with the paddle, which is annoying. Don't expect this to be ready to sail out of the box type kayak. It's more like if you're handy and you want to tinker it with a type of kayak. And it'll be the hardest for me to compare since I won't be paddling, I'll be pedaling. So I'll try to pedal at the same kind of exertion level that I would do paddling. Let's see what happens. I had to steer it by using a paddle and slow myself down, but that's realistically how you would use this kayak. It's annoying, it's weird, it's inefficient, but that's how it works. It performs okay speed-wise, but don't expect it to be faster than pedaling or paddling kayaks, because while it seems like our legs are really strong, our back is actually stronger than our legs. So if you paddle properly, you should be better off than pedaling. I'm intending to make a separate video about this kayak and review it more in depth. And now we're on to kayaks that I expect to be some of the fastest ones in the lineup, at least of the inflatable kayaks. Razor lights. Today we have 3 of them, the single one, the double one, and a Chinese knockoff one. So let's see how that goes. Not very surprisingly, this is the fastest one yet, by far. What I'm really curious is, will the double one be any faster? Since it's longer, theoretically, its speed might be faster. Let's find out and go. Well, interestingly enough, it's just a touch slower than the single. Of course, it might be within the margin of error. Vessels have a thing called hull speed, which means the maximum effortless speed that they have. And the longer they are, the higher that speed is. So I was assuming that a longer kayak could do better, but in this case it doesn't. Maybe mass has to do with it, something. Maybe it's slower to take off. So who knows? This kayak might actually be the best value performance kayak that I know of. They're probably manufactured on the same factory that makes Sea Eagles. Who knows? Let's see how they compare speed-wise. Go. Just as expected, it's performing pretty much identically to the Sea Eagle. The difference is 1 second. Very well within the margin of error, I'd guess. So, but it cost about 1/3. These days, foldables are all the rage, and most of them are expensive. However, there is a little niche for affordable foldables. Here is what you can buy new for $350. I bought it used for less than $200. Let's see how it compares. I don't expect any miracles, but the question is, can it compare favorably with the cheap Intex kayaks? Don't do that. This kayak is definitely something to get used to and feels flimsy, but it clearly can be a good competition to Intex kayaks. Speed-wise, it performs similarly. I'm really annoyed at this foam that your hands might be hitting on, and it hurts. So but you don't need a pump. It folds really easily. So that's something to look into if you're on a budget. This is ORU folding kayak. I don't have a lot of experience with them, but I tested it out and it's been really impressive. It's fast. It's definitely tippier, but speed is impressive. So I would say that I would expect it to be potentially faster than the Razorlight. Let's see how it compares with the hard shell. Ooh. Yes, thank you. My assistant is ready to save my life when I need it. It's really interesting how the perception of speed and the actual speed seems to be a little bit different. It certainly felt faster than Razorlight. I was wondering whether it was going to be faster than the hardshell kayak, but it's right at the same exact speed as Razorlight. So that's the funny thing of perception. Here's the Chinese version of the same exact kayak. I'm really curious actually how it compares speed-wise. Let's see. Well, it seems that it doesn't track quite as well and is just a tad slower, but otherwise pretty comfortable. However, it costs just a half. This one happens to be the cheapest, crappiest stand-up paddleboard you can possibly buy. I bought this one used for $100. It's close to garbage. However, it's really fun to use as a swimming platform on the beach with a bunch of people. But if you want to cross bodies of water, go somewhere, I would not advise to use this. Let's see why. Yeah. Another surprise of the day, it's actually not as bad as I thought it would be. It's comparable to a cheap kayak, but this is not the paddle that comes with it. So I imagine the included paddle would make you quite a bit slower. And here is an example of a crappy skeg. Ooh, dang, really crappy skeg. I tried to reinforce it with metal. I failed. Oh no. I put in so much work into this. It sucks. Well, okay. Now I know one way not to reinforce skegs. Here we come with the actual stand-up paddleboard that you might consider standing on and maybe go places. This is more like an $800 board. It's $129 if I'm standing and $119 if I'm kneeling. It's also difficult to compare the actual exertion to kayaks because it's different muscle groups. So I'm doing my best, but who the hell knows? I'm slightly dreading taking this across the lake. I know this will be the slowest one of them all, but it's not meant to be fast. This is a pack craft. What it's meant to do is to be super compact when you fold it and go backpacking with it. This thing only weighs 4 pounds, by far the smallest one of all of them. So this is the only pack craft that I could get my hands on. So let's give it a try. As you can see, it tracks like hell, it's slow, but it's actually not as bad as I even expected. It is the slowest one of all of them that we tested. That's not a surprise. But look, there's no skeg of any sort in this thing. It weighs close to nothing. And yet, it is able to go across the lake and potentially carry you and your backpack with that. That's impressive. To compare it with a hard shell today, we have a bit of a wild horse. This is a 19-foot homemade kayak. So not really a kayak. You will get your hands on ever, unless you want to buy this exact kayak from me. Talk to me. It hasn't seen water in probably at least a decade or so, and I've never been in it. This will be its maiden voyage as far as I'm concerned. Let's see how it does. Oh my goodness, if you know that majestic feeling of slicing through soft butter with a knife, this is what it feels like. If you can have a hard shell, on the water they're magnificent. At the same time, this thing weighs about 70 pounds, and handling it off the water is a total pain. I was cursing everything out while I was putting it on the roof rack of my car earlier today and yesterday. It's not pleasant, but on the water, it's amazing. It's better than any inflatable. And now it's time to look at the results and conclusions. This test certainly had quite a few surprises. The biggest takeaway for me is that kayak speeds don't vary quite as widely as I thought. The fastest craft that I tested was not even twice as fast as the slowest one, and I thought that it would be 3 times as fast. With that came another really surprising observation for me. Real kayak speed and perceived kayak speed seem to be quite a bit different. While it felt like I'm painfully dragging along in the slowest one and effortlessly gliding in the fastest one, the real-life speeds did not quite support that observation. In real-life conditions, there sure is a difference. Let's say you go for a 3-hour paddle in an Intex Explorer. You can cover almost 10 miles in that time. If you brought along your Razor Light, you would cover more like 14 miles. That sure is a substantial difference, but not as dramatic as I expected. Well, I hope this was helpful. Leave a comment with your thoughts. I also might be traveling the world soon, so if you want to invite me to check out some cool watercraft you have, let me know.